That's very important. And we started by talking about core values and the strengths and weaknesses, because the question is, so what now? We've identified these strengths and weaknesses. We say what we believe in about ourselves. How does that help us address these particular issues? So, what our next step here is to see if we can get to, before lunch, 2 of the 5 goals in the strategic plan. Again, don't buy mine, right? Because I may not be talking about the ones that you think Grambling should be talking about. But what I can tell you from kind of a carpetbagger's perspective is, if you're in higher education and you have a strategic plan and you're not talking about student success and you're not talking about faculty development and you're not talking about fundraising, I don't know what the plan, what plan or planet one is talking about. So let's move on then. One of the goals in the, one of the 8 issues identified in the document, 8 Issues and Solutions, was the need to enhance recruitment efforts. Now, take a good look at the slide. I think you can see that, hopefully you can see that from the back, and those that are in on the streaming, if the cameraman can zoom in on the enrollment. This is from iPads, and if you zoom in on the nature of the picture there, that's what Grambling's enrollment looks like today. Right? 83% of the students at Grambling fall into the traditional age of students. Do you know what the fastest growing segment of higher education is? It's minority women who are working, who are going back to school to advance their career options and goals. You got to get you some of that. The pool of and the nature of the demographics, what really drives enrollment, both in terms of your opportunities and in terms of the threat, is demographics. It's demographics. I didn't tell you what my doctorate, my master's and doctorate is in. Maybe I did. I told you Dr. State was my colleague. It's sociology. What we look for is, Dr. Staten is here, she can tell you, is group behavior, group dynamics, and patterns. And demography is the driving force in higher education and enrollment today. And the effort as an HBCU, now I'm not talking about Grambling, I'm not talking solely about Grambling. I told you I worked at Hampton. I was chair of the Department of Social and Director of the Division of Social Sciences at Hampton, Provost at St. Augustine's, VP at Morgan, Dean of Grad School. Been around HBCUs, in both as faculty and administrators. What I know is, being an HBCU today is not being an HBCU of yesterday, of tomorrow. It just can't. There aren't enough of us to populate 105 HBCUs and make them thrive. It just isn't enough. The demography is not there. And so if you have an enrollment pattern that looks like this, it's an issue. Now, I'm not saying that Grambling can decide, oh, we're going to swim against the tide. What I am suggesting is, if you're going to swim against the tide, you need to know that you're swimming against the tide. Because the demography, the demographics that drives who is available for you to recruit doesn't look like this anymore. Next slide, please. This is how Grambling looks. This is IPED's data.
Test.
This is the data from that you report to the federal government. Federal government lists. This is at 2014, your 2014-2015 data that you reported to the federal government. This is where I got this information from. You're 91% African American, and then this is the rest of your population. What's the demographics? What's the demographics other than African American? What is this? Is this Lincoln Parish? This is Lincoln Parish. Other than Lincoln Parish, what's the demographics immediately around the Lincoln Parish? Anybody know? White? Where are there Hispanics in this mix? Where? Slim and none. So the community right around here is immediately African American, and
I said, what about the fact that a large number of our African American students are attending predominantly white institutions?
So, Dr. Sims, I'm glad that you raised that point. Now I don't have to. Again, I'm placing it in the context that if the tradition for, when you talk about recruitment at Grambling, the idea that you're going to go out and get more African American students between the years of 18 and 24 means that you are recruiting from a very narrow pond. A very narrow pond, that the competition is not just HBCUs, but as Dr. Sims is pointing out, in 2020, around 2020, the United States is projected to be a minority-majority place. That is, there will be more minorities when you combine African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, and the like. The predominance of white families and white students available to go to school, we're already seeing that in terms of higher education, public schools. So LSU, LA Tech, all of them, they're not going to close their doors because there are not enough white students to keep their doors open. They're going to fish in the same pond that you are fishing in. So the recruitment effort has to be, as part of the goal, is more than simply, we got to go out and get some more students who are between 18 to 24 years old. The fastest growing segment, minority women who are working, who don't have time, right? Don't have time to be cheerleaders, don't have time to go to the games. They're working, they're taking care of households. How are you going to recruit those students? What are those programs going to look like? Next slide, please. So, goal 1. Now again, don't buy mine, but this is the part of getting us to talk about that. Goal 1, Grambling will enhance, and by the way, the goal in a strategic plan needs to be comprehensive enough as an umbrella that you can place a couple of specific things that you're going to do in order to realize that goal. It can't be, the goal is not, we're going to recruit more students. Okay? That's not a comprehensive enough goal. So, let me just read the goal. We'll talk a little bit more about the strategic initiatives, but Grambling will enhance student success by increasing the diversity of its student body. Increasing the diversity of its student body. You got to get down from 91% African American. So there are a couple of programs that I have been involved in as Vice President for Academic Outreach and Engagement. I have continuing studies reports to me. English as a second language reports to me. Summer school mini-semester reports to me. Morgan Online reports to me. And the TRIO programs, Upward Bound and the like, reports to me. So English as a second language, there are any number of programs. For example, Mexico has Proyecto 1000. Morgan was part of the Brazil before they imploded. We got a couple of $1 million because we had an English as a second language program, and those students came to Morgan, took English as a second language, stayed on for a year, and went back to Brazil. And now we have about, I think we have about 200 plus Saudi students at the university at all levels. In addition to the increase in Morgan Online, the fastest growing set of classes at Morgan, particularly during the summer and the winter, is online classes. So the goal to increase the diversity of the student body, improving retention and graduation rates. I have something I want to show you in a moment as we talk about funding, but just to tell you, your numbers are at 68% retention. So I think last year you lost about 130 students over 4 years. That's well over $2 million. That's well over $2 million in lost revenue, just assuming a 4-year graduation rate. But improving retention and graduation rates of both undergraduate and graduate students, hiring and retaining academically qualified and committed faculty and staff. I'm going to recommend that you think about taking that line out of that goal and putting it in the goal under faculty, supporting faculty. And then, and committed, and by offering challenging degree programs of regional and national global significance. Any comments on that goal? Where are my students? I want to still, because this is going to directly impact students. Where are my students? Right here? Right? What's your major?
Yes. I'm a junior.
So what's being suggested here is that we change the face of what Grambling looks like on the ground. What do you say to that?
Well, Grambling will always, excuse my voice, I'm a little hoarse, but Grambling will always have its history, so some things we have to stick to. But from a recruitment aspect, students want to hear more from the students than from, the alumni, because they have experienced different things, and the times are different now. So to recruit students, you have to give them a time of day aspect of what we are experiencing at the university at this level. So.
Did I hear correctly that you were saying that the perspective of the current student population might be different than the perspective of the alumni? I don't want to put words in your mouth because I'm getting ready to get on a flight and go home. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
You want to jump in on this?
I don't see a problem with increasing diversity on campus. It would improve our brand even more than what it is today. They will see that not only do we reach out to our own kind, but we can affect the lives of other minorities around us. I also agree with Ms. Watts here that students today are looking for the perspective of current college students. We are both student ambassadors here at the university, so we do go out and recruit students, and we've done a fabulous job with giving them the student aspect rather than just standing up listening to an adult tell you how to get into the university. Because, of course, that's what you need to hear, but they want to hear how it's affecting us, how we've matured and grown as we've been here at the university. So.
Thank you. I think
they can probably hear me. Under Dr. more minority students per capita than even LSU. So we've always been open door. We've always accepted, but we also know, as Booker T. Washington stated, cast down your buckets where you are. We have enough legacies and we have enough other people that we can pull. So we're always an open door. We're always invited. Give us your tired and your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. We are that institution.
Well, so thank you. And what I would challenge you is, if that's the case, how did you get to 91% African American, 18 to 24-year-old students? It's not an attack, it's just a challenge. And it's going to take more than just, okay, this is something that we need to do. This is where the money is. This is your door, or not just Grambling's door, but the door in higher education. The money walks through the door. And the goal is, how do you keep that money coming through the door no matter where it comes from? Okay? So you can take a look at under each goal. I'm suggesting you think about 3 or 4 key initiatives that help you achieve that goal. Again, I've drafted some just based on the documents that I've read about Grambling and what I think I know about higher education, but I'm going to keep saying this: don't buy this plane. You have to look at it in terms of the context of Grambling State University. Next slide, please. This is kind of what I found fascinating. So again, this is IPED's data, the data that you report to the feds, and then I go online and pull that information off there. So here's a 5-year trend in undergraduate education from 4,400 students down to what you reported for fall of 2014, 3,500 students. Notice that your increase in enrollment is graduate students, and that is consistent with what? That's consistent with the fastest growing segment of higher education. Are people returning to school to advance their career goals? I'm going to say it again. The students should close their ears because it's not perfect English, but you got to get you some of that. Right? That's where the money is walking through the door, and the total enrollment. If you want to see what that looks like in a chart, next slide, please. It looks like that. And again, the only slight increase is among your graduate student population, but your overall growth and the enrollment of undergraduates is on a decline. You can't sustain that. And what I would argue is diversifying the student population, going after that from both in terms of age, ethnicity, and region of the country, international. You know, the face of Grambling will look very different if it is to survive consistent with its historical brand. Next slide, please. So a second initiative that you might want to think about in terms of student success is to improve the retention and graduation rates. These are your current rates. You have a 68% retention rate from first to second year. You have a 12% four-year graduation rate, and you have a 30% six-year graduation rate. Ordinarily, you wouldn't put these numbers in your plan, and your final plan Grambling's final plan, particularly for public consumption, may not have those numbers in there. It's not something you really want to promote. But I have it in there so that as we talk about this, you can see it's not just a question of, okay, we're going to improve retention. No, there's some work to do here if it's going to make a difference. And what's the difference that it makes? Next slide. Okay. Look closely with my cameraman. If you can zoom in on that one, I want the people around the world to see it. So, what were the consistent weaknesses? What were the consistent opportunities? What was the consistent strength? Is funding, right? And the focus thus far has been on the threat of state cuts. But look at this. What could you do this year with $848,000? This year, 1 year, what could you do with $848,000? In 3 years, now what's the 3 years? Well, first year and then the next 3 years, the 4-year graduation rate. If you kept those students that you lost for another 3 years to graduate in 4 years, if you didn't change, what we're talking about is in fall of 2014, you had 406 first-time, full-time freshmen. And you lost 130 of them the next year. They didn't come back. What would happen if you had a program that focused on just retaining students from the first year to the second year? what could you do in 1 year with $848,000? And if you kept them for 3 more years till they graduated in 4 years, we're talking about $2.5 million. Could you hire a faculty member with $2.5 million? Could you add a different academic program with $2.5 million? Could you renovate a facility with $2.5 million? Does that have anything to do with state cuts? Well, not really. I mean, yeah, because, building and stuff. But retention, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that that's the salvation. I'm just saying you told me that funding was your big issue, both in terms of your weakness, your opportunity, and your threat. So how do you address that? Well, you can say, look, Mr. Man, you need to give us some more money. Well, yeah, you need to keep saying that, but along the way, you say, well, we need to keep more of our students because losing 130 of them over 6 years, right? 5 years is 6-year graduation. If you kept them for 6 years, which is the standard rate now for calculating graduation rates, how many of you in here, your parents said, no, you ain't got 6 years, you got 4 years. 4 years you get done, otherwise it's on you. I don't know about you, that's what my parents told me. You got 4 years. They say you got 4 years, but that was just 4 years for me. They weren't saying you got 4 years and we're going to give you money for 4 years. No, we had to find that. But 6 years is what the government uses now to calculate graduation rates for first-time, full-time freshmen. If you kept them for 6 years, what could you do with $4.2 million? Could you hire more faculty? Could you develop more academic programs? Could you expand a facility? That's just one area in terms of the goal. And again, some I've heard some of you saying to me directly, others I've overheard some conversations about, yeah, we keep getting these plans, and we keep getting these plans, and we keep getting these plans. Yeah, but the implementation of the plan got to start doing something, and that's on the community. That's on the community. That's not just, okay, we wrote the plan somehow magically produces something. That's work. We're just saying, where are you going to put the university's resources and the like? You may have heard this saying, put your money where your mouth is. I would paraphrase that a little bit and say, put your money where your money is, right? Put your money where your money is. So if your money is students walking in the door, then the money, the priority for funding needs to be where the money is walking. Either the money is walking in the door or the money is walking out the door. Put your money where your money is.
Glad to hear you talk about the retention aspect, and even more so I related it to the fact that you stated that the TRIO programs report to you. That is one of the best ways of monitoring, and we had one of the best ones in the United States. And I think that the statistics will bear that when we lost our TRIO programs, then our retention started going down in terms of scheduling of the students, in terms of making sure that athletes would not have heavy schedules during their playing seasons, all of this. So would you maybe address some of that and how you all have been able to work that out?
Well, the position of academic outreach and engagement, which I'm the vice president, began in 2013. And the trio programs that we had was Educational Talent Search and Upward Bound. And essentially, they were doing their own thing. Educational Talent Search wasn't doing anything. We had to close that down. But Upward Bound was a strong program. But it was treated like a stepchild. And my point was, we got all these potential students coming to Morgan to be a part of this program, and they're going elsewhere to go to school. Oh no, we can't have that. And so the point was to get our admissions team and the Upward Bound team to work together to make certain that the first choice for any student in the Upward Bound program, we have a guaranteed admissions policy now, that if you successfully complete the Upward Bound program at Morgan, you're guaranteed admission to the university. So my point is simply this. You want to support the effort that gets your money in the door and to keep it from walking out the door. And we're not talking about a little bit of money. Okay? Next slide. And so again, the student success. These are a couple of initiatives. I won't spend a whole lot of time trying to read each initiative. I think. As the steering committee goes, I will encourage the steering committee to make certain that drafts of the document are available for your comment. But what I'm trying to, the point is that in any strategic plan in an institution of higher education, I can't imagine it starting anywhere without talking about student success. And then whatever initiatives there are, it's going to talk about enrollment and retention. And I'm telling you that retention is as important as admission, because that's where the money is either walking in or the money is walking out. Next slide. Okay. So that's goal one. Any comments? Anybody want to take me on, challenge the enrollment? We've heard from the students about the face of Grambling. Anybody want to talk about that? When we did the strategic plan, we did a retreat at Morgan, and the most hotly debated topic in that retreat was the notion of what it meant to be an HBCU. Morgan was founded in 1867. I think Grambling was founded in 1901. Is that right? My homework. And that long tradition, the brand, the history. Anybody want to talk about, is that painful? Is that painful to imagine what a new Grambling has to look like?
Well, one thing I would like to say is when I first heard that Grambling's admission policy had changed to where we were no longer an open-door university, the first thing that I thought of went back to our mission and why Grambling started. It bothered me because that meant that a lot of our students that need Grambling was not going to be allowed to come in. So I would hope that in some of the areas that we would take a look at that policy to see how we can reach more students and allow them to come to Grambling. But I also want us to take a look at the type of student that we are now getting, and this is not unique to just Grambling. A lot of the universities are getting students that need more than the academic areas. So we need to look at student development programs that will close that gap so that they can move forward successfully. We have to understand that some students cannot work on their own. So we need to have hands-on programs that would guide that student all the way up. And that's important for retention as well.
Thank you. Let me get back here. People trying to hide from me back here. So what about this notion of that the face of Grambling might change in order to realize any strategic plan? Anybody back here want to?
I believe that I am Monica Bradley, and I believe anything that's not changing is really dying. And so we plan to be here for another 100 years. Therefore, we definitely have to have a vision of what Grambling State University will look like in the future. And of course, when HBCUs were founded, when we were founded back in 1901, we had no other choices. There is so much competition and choices for students today. The expectation and delivery of services is different, and it is highly competitive. So it's definitely going to be different. We need to embrace it. We will not use our flavor, because there are some things we have always done better than anybody ever will be able to do. And that's nurture our students and provide them with what they need. Student success has always been our agenda. It will continue to be our agenda. So it doesn't matter whether we're talking about the percentage of African Americans versus other race individuals, because we do know that's just America. We are the melting pot, and Grambling is definitely going to be reflective of that. It has always been reflective of that. In my undergraduate years as a student, this was my first exposure to international students and an international environment. So it's always been a welcome experience. I think our students grow from it, and so we're not hiding from it. I think we definitely need to make it a part of our strategic plan so we can, on purpose and intentionally, grow our other race students. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me take. I didn't want to do this, but let me go ahead and go there. As I told you, at Hampton, which is private HBCU, St. Aug, another private HBCU, Morgan. What about this notion? And does this have anything to do with your strategic planning process, particularly as it relates to admissions, enrollment, and retention? We all have similar missions. You know, Booker T. Washington came from Hampton and went to Tuskegee. And Morgan was started to educate African American ministers, and all of us kind of developed immediately around following the Civil War, somewhere around 1865. And so we all have a similar kind of origin, that is to educate those students. I think Grambling was begun because the farmers in the area wanted to educate their sons and daughters. But what about this notion, what's the cost to Grambling of educating people who can't afford to go to Grambling? Is that anything we ought to be concerned about? Is it anything that ought to be in the strategic plan? That if your mission is to educate students who are otherwise have no other place to go, the demography that goes along with that, the socioeconomic statuses, elements that go along with that is not only are they not, and I'm not just talking about Grambling, I'm telling you that's the issue around the 105 HBCU communities. If they can't, if they are unprepared to go to school, then the demographics, the economics of it also suggest that their families can't afford to send them to school. That's the 1-2 link. Is that an element? I really shouldn't have gone there, should I? I'm sorry, I should go to church. But no, really, this is all part of the enrollment issue. Anybody want to jump in on this? Anybody new?
Good morning. My name is Anthony Cherry. I'm a graduating senior studying political science. And your question, if we dive into your question and we go the route I think you're trying to apply, then we lose the tradition that we are. If we, say forget the students that can't pay for, well, most of the students that come here can't pay for it. So if we do what you're saying, then we will lose the tradition that we. What I think you're saying is that what we traditionally do is we let students that can't afford or don't have no access to go to school. And so you're saying it's like a double-edged sword. If we do that, we're letting students, get opportunity, but at the same time we're losing money because these people can't pay for it. So we got to find ways for them to pay for it, or they can't come to school. And so, but that's the tradition we have, and that's something that we need to, continue. I think the argument is how do we get federal money or state money that's really caring about HBCUs. I think that, I think that America politics, they don't really care about HBCUs as they should. And we gotta find a way where we can really, cause that's what HBCUs are for. We let students that don't have the opportunity go to school. We find ways for them to get here. So if we lose that tradition, then we're not gonna be HBCU no more. I feel we would just be like a PWI eventually. I do think that we need to diversify though. I think that's needed, but we need to diversify in the minority. We should get more Hispanics here. We should get more, Asians and all those other minorities. But I think that we still have to maintain those people that can't come to school. We got to get them here. We need to get the people that's minorities that may have a 3.0 in high school, but they don't have the funds to actually get to where they need to go.
Thank you. That's very good. Let me ask one other kind of follow-up question. You are the president of HBCU 2, okay? And your mission is to educate students who otherwise would not be able to go to school, and you know that going to include this group, admit this group, means that their family income can't pay for the faculty, the buildings, the facilities, but you're the president of HBCU. What do you say? How do you address that?
How do you address the fact that there's no funds? Is that what you're pretty much asking? That's a good question, actually. I mean, I'm going to have to think about that a little longer, honestly.
So, let me just say, I'm not prescribing anything, right? I'm not prescribing anything. But if you're going to have a strategic plan that moves you forward, everything has to be on the table. And as I said, the 105 HBCUs have the same mission. I'm not proposing that we get rid of that mission. I don't want that to go out. You have that on? I didn't say that. What I am saying is all of those issues have to be part of how you look at enrollment, admission, retention, the money walking in, the money walking out. That's what I thought I saw a hand in the back here. Oh, got it.
Good morning, I'm Brett X. Copeland. As you were talking about the mission, I was thinking that the mission of Grambling was kind of to serve the underserved students. And I think as we look at the information that you just gave us about, where the students really are. I think we can still maintain our mission and diversify our student body at the same time. I still think that there are other students who are underserved and who could really benefit from the Grambling model of education. And they don't all have to be black students. They can be national students, they can be Caucasian students, they can be whomever we can find. They certainly can be older persons, many of whom had no opportunity to complete their education at a younger years. So I don't think we need to be afraid of the changing face of the institution. We just need to be true to the mission. And I think if we do that, we can still maintain the Grambling brand, but at the same time, increase our student enrollment by diversifying the student population.
I think we need to look at our population where we're located. The fastest growing population are the Hispanics. We have Dubac, Farmerville, Ruston, Simsboro, where the Hispanics are located, Arcadia, because they work in the low-income jobs. They work in the chicken plant, they work in the glass plant, all around. They all have children. And I know personally, from a personal standpoint, that their kids are going to the schools in the area. A lot of them are going to Simsboro, Farmerville, Dubai. But they're not going to college. They're not going to go to Tech. I know because I have some working for me. And I've been trying to counsel the girls especially. One took a dental course. She hasn't yet gotten a job. The other was doing a nursing down at the school in Ruston. But she gave that up too. And one of the things that she had said as she was going from grade to grade was that I don't want to do what my mother is doing, which is cleaning my house. But that's what she's doing. Every Thursday, she comes in to my house and cleans. She goes into my son's house and she cleans it. And she's only 21 years old. They are an asset that we could really use. They are bilingual because their parents start them off speaking Spanish. Then they go to school and they learn English. But the parents still communicate with them in Spanish. So they are bilingual. That would do a lot for our community. Now we've got to catch them early, like 10th grade, 11th grade, and before they graduated from high school. Well, these two girls graduated from high school. They had an older brother who quit school in the junior year. He's out doing lawn service, all in Grambling, Ruston, whatever, and making good money. But he does not have a college education.
Our biggest problem has been stability here in the last 10 years. I'm old enough to remember Dr. Adams ate at his table often. Prez was like a grandfather to me. Dr. Johnson was a mentor. They were focused. They were here to do what needed to be done. If we could ever get some stability here at Grambling, we would be able to continue with the initial thrust of remediation, then the enrichment aspect of it. But we have got to become stable. Grambling can function. It can get the federal funds. We know how to do that. Faculty members have to become a little bit more dedicated and realize that we are not going to get all students who are A and B students. We have to take them from where they are to where they ought to be. We can retain the students. We have retained the students. It is a matter of commitment. We are not opposed to change. Change is good, but our basic problem has been we've been trying to fix something that wasn't broken, and we didn't know how to fix that wasn't broken. We do what we do well, but give us an opportunity to do what we do well. Let us stabilize, and then we can go on.
I definitely agree 100% with that statement which just said. But I'd like to add, if we get data why the student leave, that give us direction. What do we need to do? I interact with the students frequently, and some of them say, I have a child I have to keep. Like she said very, very well. I don't have transportation from Ruston. The class is all day long. So we have to look at non-traditional mechanism to reach these students. It doesn't have to be from 8 to 4, whatever the case is. Maybe the class has only been the evening. Maybe the class has been the weekend. Maybe the classes provide transportation to Ruston. I mean, some kind of reaching those students which we have specific need. That is the reason they leave. And some of them, our traditional way of teaching doesn't work. Just stand in front of the blackboard and half of them using the phone. They have to get engaged and have to be monitored from day to day so they will be able to catch up, not wait to the midterm. In other words, learning strategy tell us we have to mean that day by day by day by day. I'm not talking all the students need that, but a large portion of the students, if we offer them a mechanism to meet their individual need as far as meeting, coming, and that kind of thing, as well as we have many tutorial sessions. We'll come to the tutorial, nobody show up. So it takes more than just come to the tutorial. It needs individualized, a small group, a time they can come, and we invest in that. I'm positive this mechanism will work. Thank you.
So, thank you. So my point is not to cause trouble, and I want to reiterate, I'm not prescribing anything, but that is how complex admission and recruitment and retention is. And if you're going to have a strategic plan that talks about the #1 issue that you said, I didn't say it, you said it, recruitment, funding and recruitment, then these are all facets of that. And if you're going to have a population of students who are unprepared for the services that you provide and can't afford the instructional services that you provide, then if you're going to be true to that mission, it's going to take more than admitting them to school. Right? It's the supports that are necessary, that's the words of the show, that's more money, that's more money. All I want to make certain is that as you work through this plan, that you make certain that when you talk about admission, recruitment, and retention, that you're covering all the bases. And then what are you going to do about that? Whatever you decide, then at least you'll be looking at that thing straight in the face without saying, okay, we're going to recruit more students. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're going to recruit this group of students. You're going to recruit this group of students. In other words, you're going to build a class. Every year, you're going to build a class. You're not just going to recruit students. You're going to have this group of diverse students. You're going to have this many students who can afford Grambling. You're going to have this many students who are consistent with that universal mission. Okay. All right, very good. That's the first goal. Let's talk a little bit before lunch about faculty supporting faculty excellence. Next slide. Okay, so again, I hope that you can see that we are working through, in some respects, what you said was important. Recruitment, now we're talking about faculty development. You can question, and I encourage you to question, the role here, how you want to describe this goal. What I want to suggest to you is, at an institution of higher education, that any strategic plan like student success needs to address in some way that issue that's essential to the quality, the nature, and the amount of your faculty. It's an institution of higher education. Your SWOT analysis, your core values told me that you believe that as well. So the strategic plan, goal 2, in order to support a student-friendly learning environment, facilitate the use of a variety of classroom and online instructional methods, and enhance professional service and outreach to communities throughout Louisiana, Grambling will. Ms. Proctor, would you go back a couple of slides to the beginning of the student success slide, please? Go back, go back, go back. Go back to the beginning. Back, back, back. Right there. Remember I said that my recommendation would be to take out this phrase from student success, by hiring and retaining academically qualified and committed faculty and staff. You might want to think about taking that, Dr. Hilton, where are you? You might want to think about taking that, and Dr. Smiley, the steering committee, that phrase and putting it in, Ms. Proctor, if you go back to that, start, Grambling will hire and retain, put it in that goal instead of in the student goal. So it would say, Grambling will hire and retain qualified faculty and staff, and promote excellence and encourage and provide resources for the production and dissemination of the highest quality research, scholarship, and artistic creativity at the university. You might want to consider that. It's not going to rise and fall on it, but it may be more consistent, make more sense there. So the strategic initiative to identify high-quality academic degree programs. When I was chair at Hampton, part of the reason that they hired me was because I had my sociology concentration from Bowling Green was criminal justice, and they had one of the early, some of you may remember, the federal government had the police money to develop criminal justice programs. Hampton had a grant. I was teaching at Trenton State at the time. They called me they had about a year left on the grant, called me to come to Hampton to chair the Department of Sociology and direct this program. So when I got there, sociology, one of the problems in the sociology department was low enrollment. There was, in the standard fare of sociology courses, things like deviant behavior, social problems. They don't draw many students. So a course then that I developed, I call sex crimes. Sex crimes. It was standing room only. But you know what the program was? It was nothing more than the sociology of deviant behavior. It just wasn't called sociology of deviant behavior. It was called sex crimes. What's my point? The point is that maybe it's necessary, in addition to adding new programs. First of all, you got to identify what those programs are at Grambling that are attracting the largest number of students. Where's your money? Where's the money walking to? Where's the money walking away from? But also be aware of the marketing of that program. How that program, sociology of deviant behavior, which 10 students might sign up, became sex crimes, and I couldn't keep enough faculty to teach the number of students demanding that course. So identify high-quality academic departments of significance to Grambling's future, and develop a multi-year hiring plan to recruit faculty. In other words, it's a question of where you put your strategic resources and what you're going to develop. No institution can be all things to all people. So what is it that Grambling is going to focus on, become known as? In the SWOT analysis, one of the strengths that it indicated was it had these niche programs, but it didn't, other than service learning and criminal justice, it didn't identify what those niche programs are. I'm encouraging you to take a good hard look at your academic program, see where those numbers are. Don't be afraid of them. And what do you need, what does Grambling need to do in order to promote those programs? Yes, some programs are not going to get the same amount of resource, same amount of attention, but if the money is not walking into those programs, what does that mean in terms of how Grambling promotes itself? Now again, I don't know what those programs are. I didn't look for them. I didn't go to the catalog. And my conversation with Dr. Larkin will not be about, well, you need to do this. I don't know what you need. But I do know in terms of strategic planning, the first thing is to identify what the nature of the issues are. Where are the programs at Grambling that are produced, where the money is walking in the door? What are those programs? What are programs where the money is walking out of the door? What are those programs? And then what does the Grambling community decide that it wants to do about it? That's hard stuff. That's hard stuff. Now, I was provost at St. Augustine's. I know you start talking about this program, that program, and you might as well just go ahead and pour tar on yourself and dump some feathers on yourself and say, okay, I've done it. I get it. But in all fairness to Grambling State University, that's what you got to do. That's what any institution has to do. Where's the money walking into the university? Where's the money walking out of the university?
Faculty Senate President, I was listening to your comments there, new program offerings. Certainly that's something that we need to look at here. But I think here at Grambling, you know, our faculty, in my opinion, is always concerned about the quality of our teaching and the quality of learning. But in that thought process, there are some impediments that certainly, you know, impedes our ability, I think, to do what we really want to and need to do. Things such as salaries, haven't been in an environment where we've been around and haven't received increases in salaries for years. But at the same time, we see funding for administration. Administration funding is growing and growing to support staff at the same time while consideration for faculty is going down. I've said to the administration here that the faculty is the heartbeat of an institution. We say certainly we want to be student-centered, but without a quality faculty. And I recall talking to a president, and he was sharing with me the success of building a great institution. And one of the things we talked about, he says, give me a quality faculty, and I'll give you a quality and first-class university. And so basically what I'm saying, in this plan, in this strategic plan we are addressing today, if we don't truly consider improving conditions for our faculty, I think we are falling. In an environment where, resources just for a classroom, you don't have quality classroom chairs are broken in our classroom, don't have adequate, technical support. These things, to me, cripple our university. And if we're serious, we've got to address those issues. We are losing faculty at this institution for pay. We're losing them because there are a lot of unmet needs. And so I'm going to continue to insist that that spotlight be put on our faculty. And I don't want to underestimate, we have some of the greatest minds at this institution. Also, we talked about shared governance in the sense that we believe as a faculty we have a lot to offer here at this university. Many of these problems you're discussing here today, Dr. Taylor, if we were truly a part of the shared governance, I believe we can help in addressing and overcoming some of these problems. But for years, these kinds of discussions have fallen on deaf ears, and here we are today again talking about how do we go about, and my last comment is going to be on this, and I think you alluded to it earlier. With all of these grandiose plans, but we've got to find a way to put legs, for a better word, to these plans. We've got to find a way to buy into these plans to make them become a reality. Because again, somebody said, if they're just sitting on the shelf, they're not going to do us any good. So the challenge is going to be, how do we breathe life into all that we say and do here? Without that, I think it's for naught.
So thank you, Dr. Simmons. And I think, once again, so if you weren't engaged in this process, right? If you weren't engaged in a strategic planning process, what other voice would you have to get this down as an operational issue? And so what I would encourage the faculty to do is to own this. That is, so I listened very carefully to what you were saying. There are ways to address pay inequities. There are ways to address facilities that the faculty need. So let's just take facilities for a moment. Though in the analysis it was not as high as one might imagine. But facilities is not just the arena or the football field. It's also the classroom. So what are the priorities? If we're going to, let's say we do retention. and we get $848,000 by retaining more students. How do we divvy up that $848,000? What percentage of it goes to faculty or should go to faculty? And if we are successful, when we are successful at retaining them for 5 more years, and we're now talking about an extra $4.2 million, where does that, how's that money get divvied up in terms of facilities and or pay for faculty? So obviously I can't come in today and answer it, but I think they are valid questions, and you told me that faculty and funding and student recruitment are your priorities. So that ought to be, it ought not be a problem getting some aspect of that into the strategic plan. And if the faculty are the heartbeat and they are the ones who are here after the presidents are gone, after the students are gone, then they ought to be able to say, irrespective of the new personnel coming in, we have this plan, this is what we are living by, here's how we're divvying up those resources. So thank you, Dr. Simmons. I didn't hear, I heard the frustration, but I didn't hear that there is nothing that we are engaged in today that's inconsistent with those goals. So thank you. And again, the other consistent thing is, it's number 2. It's the number 2 goal in terms of the strategic planning process. And so I'm encouraging the Grambling community, and in particular the faculty, to say what strategic goal 2 needs to look like.
My name is Rachel Neal. I'm the controller here at the university, and I'm also a Grambling graduate, 1996. I think one of the things also we need to kind of consider when we're looking at our strategic plan is feeding the need for the workforce in our area. I came out of the private workforce with the sector before I came here. And I know I have an accounting degree, a CPA license. And in that area, there's a lot of companies that are looking for people. They cannot find, qualified people to fill those positions. I can think of the CPA firm that I came from. They're constantly looking for, and they just can't find those. I think we need to look at maybe not necessarily even degree programs, but maybe prep courses. Like when I took my CPA exam, I had to do it online. I had to do it, through a book and study on my own. Why don't we have classes where somebody can come here on a Saturday, study for the CPA exam, prepare them for the exam, so you can go, those kinds of things, preparing people to get their licenses or certifications and things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to even, deal with it would be something on a Saturday or something like that, something non-traditional at night, and it would feed CenturyLink, who built that big building, and they're looking to hire people, and we could partner with them to be able to fill some of those slots, and use the staff that we already have, and, give people other opportunities to fill, those are things that's not even being done right now. CPA exam, normally, people have to go way to Jackson to even take a course to sit down in a classroom. There's nothing around here that does that right now. I think we need to look at those type things that is needed, but we don't even have it in this area. We don't even have to compete for that because there's nothing around here right now.
Thank you. I actually, Dr. Smiley, Dr. Hilton, I think in one of the goals, we talk a lot about tell me her name again, please. Ms. Neal spoke about. So Ms. Neal, not only CPA, right, but Microsoft certification, Cisco certification, all of those professional certification opportunities and programs. What Ms. Neal was also talking about is that there are companies that will ask for closed classes. So for example, you have a master's program in sports management, is that right? So there are companies like, for example, Nike might say, we've got these group of employees and we want them to have a master's degree. The feds do it with the military, or have a closed class of, say, 15 to 20 of their employees that go through as a cohort to do that. And so somewhere in the strategic plan, it may be here in another one of the strategic initiatives, or it may be in the collaborative goals that are identified in the 8 issues where we talk about professional certification, closed courses, and the like. But thank you. Next slide, please, Ms. Proctor. So faculty in all of Grambling's graduate and undergraduate academic programs will implement a full cycle of assessment of outcomes for academic programs by identifying expected learning outcomes, documenting the implementation of assessment methods and data collection on student achievement. Where does this come from? So among the documents that I read was the Sachs report for Grambling, and it identified a number of things that Grambling needed to do to maintain accreditation. I said earlier about this version of the strategic plan it's going to address several issues, and one of them is you're trying to show Sachs that you are aware of what they said was necessary, and this is how you are addressing it. You're showing your accreditation bodies that you do evaluate, you do program evaluations as faculty for your program. In other words, a lot of the strategic initiatives you don't have to invent. They've already been identified for you in those, either from your Board of Regents and or from Sachs and or from your accrediting bodies. What are they saying you need to do? Well, some of that, it would be good to reflect in the strategic plan, because it shows then that you are aware of it. This is actually the second iteration of that, of a strategic plan document. The first one was developed by the steering committee in November, and it had references to the self-study, the Sachs self-study, and other documents. This is a third initiative. Next slide, please.
Pat Johnson, College of Education. One of the things that concerns me along the conversation that we just had about accreditations, the College of Education and the unit is facing the reaffirmation of accreditation for teacher education. And it was not mentioned at all in any of the 8 top issues. And that, I think, is an insult, because Grambling is known as a university that produces great teacher educators.
So let me follow up. Then we would presumably want to make certain that, at least in some broad form, that doesn't happen again, right? So what? So what would you suggest as part of this strategic planning process, or is there not a role in the strategic planning process for this concern?
Yes, there are places. I just think that teacher education specifically has not been mentioned, and I think it needs to stay in the forefront. It needs to be in the language, and people need to be made aware that we still produce great teacher educators, and we need to support the College of Education.
I'm glad you're here to say that. I see Dr. Hilton is typing it in, and Dr. Smiley, but that's the whole point. That's why we're here.
I'm Doris Williams-Smith, and I'm also in the College of Education, and I'd like to add to what Dr. Johnson said, that when we talk about the strategic initiative, identify high-quality academic departments of significant importance to Grambling's future vision, and then we cannot exclude education, because education is important to the future. Education does make a difference in every area, because anybody who is going to be successful has to be educated. And so teachers are important. Preparing teachers, preparing principals, that's very important, and it cannot be ignored. And so whenever we identify what are the important programs, we cannot exclude education as one of the key, very important programs.
Thank you, and I trust that you were clear. I'm not cherry picking, right? I haven't, you said service learning, you said criminal justice. I'm just reporting what you said. But the conversation about identifying what those important programs are essential. The other thing I want to be clear about is I'm not suggesting that any particular program, let's say, for example, there are some programs at a university, I don't care if you got one major in it, if you're going to be a university, you got to have that program. That's English as a department. We got rid of any number of other programs. Depending on your mission, depending on the university, some programs, whether they have majors or not, are important to the notion of a university. What are those at Grambling? But that's not every program. Where's the money walking in the door? Where's the money walking out of the door? What programs do we need to support because Grambling is a university? All right, well, I've got, yes, sir.
I have to butt in sort of out of nowhere. I had to teach classes this morning, so I'm going to be here early. Some of what I might say may have already been discussed. I don't really know. But I wanted to make a few points. I think that we need to change Grambling's image. We need to change Grambling's culture. That there's been a neglect of the academic side of the university. And we have the slogan of enhancing the academic profile of the university, but the people in charge appeared not to know what it was. A number of strong departments have become much weaker because of neglect and because of internal bureaucratic dysfunctions in Grambling. So that there are departments like, and I'm not just talking about my department, English. All right. Huh? I'm talking. Do you hear now? It's not. Want me to be louder? I can be louder. Okay. A number of important academic departments have been neglected. I think it's important we defend the status of Grambling as a comprehensive university. Grambling right now, as best I can tell, is under attack from people from the former governor, Jindal, and from his allies in the state legislature. They would like to dismantle Grambling and make us a community college. They revealed their intentions by that revised mission statement that was circulated under Warwick, that deleted research, that deleted the pursuit of truth, that deleted comprehensive university, that deleted the preservation of African American history, literature, and culture. That's what they want. They are pushing junior colleges. They're undermining the four-year schools. They are setting up what amounts to a caste system where the black students will be condemned to lower echelon jobs with two-year degrees. There are a few fields where there are high-paying jobs and two-year degrees, but as soon as they generate enough of them, that's going to disappear. It's a lure and a trap, because the law of supply and demand will apply as soon as there are enough people in a given specialty. And if those jobs are automated, if those jobs are outsourced abroad, those people are going to be left high and dry with minimal education. We need to defend the mission of the university. Right now, everything's being reduced to workforce development. But workforce development is basically vocational education, is a trap and a lure. We want to have our students well educated so they're competitive with anyone, anywhere. We used to have a very strong criminal justice program, but as Dr. Simmons will tell you, it's been neglected. We used to have a very strong program in psychology and sociology. We put a lot of our students into good grad schools, and a lot of them have become professors. We have the state, that's better. State has done a number of things. And unfortunately, some mistaken administrators have collaborated with them, like when we lost the consent decree. Or when Grambling decided to reduce the number of required English courses from 4 to 3, when in fact almost every other university is requiring at least 4. And when in fact we have students with the lowest standardized test scores of any state institution. Part of that is because the way Grambling's been recruiting. Part of that is because of Grambling's image. People who were here in the 80s will testify that Grambling was stronger academically then than it is now. We've got to reverse those negative trends. We've got to re-emphasize academics. And if we do, Grambling will survive and Grambling will thrive. But we have to face our deficiencies and make corrections.
All right, well, thank you. So we are, we've accomplished, let me just reiterate, this morning what I wanted us to be able to do, at least get through, is the core values, the SWOT analysis, and the first 2 goals of the strategic plan. Those were the big ones. We're about to break for lunch and then come back about 1 o'clock. And the next 3 goals will move a little bit quicker, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about about a capital campaign as an element of the strategic plan. All right, thank you.
All right, lunch is available. I'm facing you toward my left, so please feel free to go ahead and get your lunch. Thank you.